The Jets entered Week 18 wanting to end their 2023 season on a high note, start the 2024 calendar year on a high note as well. That is exactly what they did. Final score, 17-3 Jets over the Patriots in Foxborough. The Jets' 15-game losing streak against New England is officially snapped behind Breece Hall's 37-carry, 178-yard performance on the ground. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, Quincy Enunwa. We'll hear from Anthony Beck momentarily. A couple people probably real ecstatic about Breece Hall's performance, one of them being our Iowa State guy. That's Anthony Beck right now. So, Beck, we'll hear from you in a minute. But, EA, this is obviously what the Jets wanted to do, and they accomplished it to start the new year off right.
Breece Hall was amazing today. 37 carries, 178 yards in all. He put this baby on ice with the 50-yard score there in the fourth quarter, and then he cashed in on the two-point conversion as well. Just think about what he's done after sustaining that ACL tear in Week 7 last year against the Denver Broncos. The future is bright for the New York Jets, and one of the big reasons why, Quincy, is number 20, Breece Hall.
Absolutely. He's their workhorse. We've been talking about it all year, right? He's had his ups and downs, but for the most part, he's been a consistent member of this offense that has been putting points on the board, putting yards out there. He's a guy that you can rely on in the pass game and the run game, and today we got to saw him really do it in the run game.
Anthony, I want to ask you about his volume because he had 37 carries. That's the most by any running back in the NFL. And I feel like for a long time now throughout the season, you've been saying the Jets just need to put the ball in his hands and see what happens. Obviously, the 50-yard touchdown was the cherry on top of the sundae. He gets his 1,500 yards from scrimmage, the first Jets running back to do so since Thomas Jones in 2008, Anthony.
Yeah, listen, I played with one of the best of all time, Curtis Martin. It's a slow grind. You pound away, you pound away. He finds a way to ultimately break big runs throughout a game when you feed him enough. Now, got to control the game, got to play good defense, can't turn it over. This was that's why I felt like today was going to be a perfect scenario for him because he was ultimately going to break a run and cap that performance off with the 4+ yards that he had on all the other carries that allowed him to have the game that he did. And again, he is the most valuable chip on this football team. And even next year, when Aaron Rodgers comes back, he will be the most valuable chip on this football team because he is an eraser. And you think he had a good year this year. This will be about as low as the yards rushing he'll have in his career moving forward, in my opinion, and combined yards from scrimmage, in my opinion. And I also feel like with Aaron Rodgers coming back, man, he may rush for over 1,400 yards. I mean, sky's the limit because of the fact of the balance you'll have. But again, that start to the season, the limited carries, the pitch count, I mean, to me, he is your horse day one moving forward, and he can last. He's built for it. He's been doing it for all his career in college, and you saw a little bit throughout the season, and in particular today, just felt like the weather and the conditions today were built for Breece Hall, and he showed up.
Jets finished 7-10 in the 2023 season. The Patriots 4-13, their fewest win total in the Bill Belichick era, their fewest win total since 1992. And to your point about Breece Hall, he became the first Jets running back in history with at least 35 rushes and over 170 yards. The future is bright for the Jets, and we're going to talk about the outlook in a minute here. And I think what's even more impressive about this game is when we were talking about it pregame, the Patriots defense, really good against the run. Yeah. The Patriots defense at home, fantastic, not to mention the elements we were talking about. Maybe this plays in New England's favor. We were talking about this game being played at a phone booth. The Jets knocked the phone booth out of commission here in Foxborough.
Man, Hall is so patient. He's got tremendous vision, and he's so powerful as well. He's the complete package. He talked about it last week that he thinks he's a top 3 running back in the National Football League. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And what's going to drive him next year, and he took to social media this week saying it, that he wants to be a Pro Bowler next year and an All-Pro as well. And as Anthony mentioned before, listen, the bottom line is when you look at Breece Hall and you pair him up with Aaron Rodgers next season, you're talking about a back who potentially is going to get you 2,000 yards from scrimmage. Right. And then what I really liked about today's performance, too, on the other side of the ball, let's give the defense some credit as well because they did what they should do. They dominated an offense that has struggled throughout the year that was starting Bailey Zappi and Quincy today. 7 sacks, 10 PDs, and a pair of takeaways there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about balanced football. This is real old school football. You know, I'm a guy as a receiver. I hate talking about the snow and all this other stuff. But man, this is the type of football that you really like to throw back. You could put that in black and white, and it would look the same as those games back in like the 50s and stuff, right? It was a great game offensively, great game defensively. They had a sound game plan, and those guys executed it well.
The Jets held the Patriots in the first quarter to -7 total yards. Bailey Zappi completes 12 of 13 passes for 88 yards, 2 touchdowns for or 2 interceptions, 0 touchdowns.
Yeah, 12 of 30, right? Yeah.
For a passer rating of 20.1. This Jets defense is good. To your point, EA, the Patriots offense, not great. They've been struggling all year. They've been dealing with quarterback changes as well. The Jets had 7 sacks. One of them was to big Quinnen Williams, and he caught up with Caroline Hendershot after the game.
Of lineman Quinnen Williams. Quinnen, the sacks have been fewer than you would like this year, but you got 2 today. What was your mentality going into today?
Just finishing strong for my team, finishing strong for the organization. Man, I know it ain't like we wanted it to, but at the end of the day, we wanted to come out here and finish strong for the fan base, for the organization, for myself, for the team. And at the end of the day, it beat the Patriots, man. I never beat them in my career. This was my first career win against the Patriots, man. So playing against them guys year in and year out, man. So getting a chance to win today, to win football games in general. So.
How sweet does that first win in your Jets career against the Patriots feel right now?
It feels good, man. I want to stack wins every week, man. So I want to win more games than just this, man. So going into a new year, man, with a win for sure. Trying to start the year off right. So 2024 can be amazing for the Jets fan base, for the Jets organization, for us. So
awesome. Thanks for your time, Q.
Thank you.
Quinnen Williams is a lot of things. He's a Pro Bowler, 2 straight years. He's an All-Pro. He's also a PR-trained Alabama man under Nick Saban. That was a very good answer, very political answer there from Quinnen Williams. But I do think that it is important for this team. Like organizationally, Quincy, we've been talking about it for a while, but as a player, you were a part of the last Jets team to beat the Patriots. What is, do you think, the mood in that locker room like after a game like this?
I mean, on top of the fact that it's a win, right? This is a team that you haven't beaten. They've had your number for a very long time. I think even that year that we won, I mean, sometimes I look back at it and I'm like, well, you know, they had their backups in because they knew they were making it to the playoffs. But at the end of the day, it's still a win. A win is a win, and it's an exciting opportunity for you, especially against a team like Bill Belichick. And if this is his last game, right, you're sending him off in a great way, right? This is a guy that really started his success against the Jets, right? So to end it, you know, with losing against the Jets, I think it's just a great way to wrap it up. Everybody's going to talk about, oh, the Jets are hanging on to the Patriots and all this other stuff. I mean, listen, man, you got to celebrate the small wins sometimes, right? And this is a small win in the grand scheme of the season, but, you know, it's fun.
And I will say that this win for the Jets gives Bill Belichick the most losses of any head coach in football history, which is just really a testament to how long he's been coaching in the National Football League. Anthony, when you take a look at how the Jets played on defense, was it better than you were expecting the matchup to be? Like, the matchup was advantage Jets, Patriots offense, Jets defense. Did they outplay the way you expected them to?
Yeah, I mean, this is what your expectation was the whole season, and they played just as good versus other teams this year. I mean, there was so much pressure on this defense to be great every single week. I think it's kind of unfair to actually, you know, if you look at the big picture of how they played, they did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they played at a very high level early on the first half of the season when they were trying to give the offense some time to get their show figured out. So, you know, just a great effort. I mean, clearly the defensive line every week, well coached, always had a chip on their shoulder, always wanted to be great. Guys were striving to get the sack every single time, and it made a lot of quarterbacks uncomfortable, and it showed today. You know, they didn't get a bunch of sacks because it started snowing, guys. They got a bunch of sacks because they whipped the guy in front of them butt, and that's just how they are. And, you know, is this room going to look a little different next year? I believe it will be. But, man, there's so much depth on this D-line that those, you know, sacks that wherever they go next year, if they're not back, will be replaced collectively or by an individual player. So just kudos across the board for the effort the defensive line gave every year, because just really impressive. It allowed our secondary to be one of the best secondaries in the league. And I promise you this, Sauce and DJ, those guys are outstanding, excellent, maybe the best dual threats in the business. But, man, when you have a pass rush and that quarterback doesn't have a lot of time to throw, it helps those guys excel even more. So, again, just across the board, it starts up front on any side of offense or defense. Defensive line should be applauded for their effort for the entire year.
Yeah, I think that when you take a look at the Jets defense, kind of like what what Anthony was talking about. You take a look at Quinnen, 2 sacks, Bryce Huff, 2 sacks. Those are the 2 guys that led it. To Anthony's point, EA, Jets are going to have some decisions to make with free agents in the offseason. It's the case every year. One of those is Bryce Huff, who reached double-digit sacks for the first time in his career. He's had a fantastic year, but again, the Jets like to rotate players up front, and he told reporters post-game that he will not give the Jets a hometown discount just because that's where he got his start in the NFL.
Well, it's an interesting situation that we're going to have to monitor throughout the offseason because Bryce Huff, give him a lot of credit, also give the coaching staff a lot of credit to put him in position to make plays. And this Jets defensive line, outstanding. Good frontline players, but great depth, and they just roll people through. For me, it all starts with Quinnen Williams on the interior because he's the guy who's pushing the pocket. No quarterback in the NFL likes that pressure up the middle. They have nowhere to step up. Today, he had the 2 sacks. Entering this game, he led the National Football League with pressures. But on the outside, you got a chess piece like John Franklin Myers who can play outside, but he can shift inside as well. You drafted Will McDonald in the first round. Will he make a jump that we saw from Jermaine Johnson? Jermaine Johnson got on the board with a sack today. He was really, really outstanding in his second year. So Huff, give him credit, give the Jets coaching staff credit, and we'll have to see what happens in the offseason. Whether he's back or not, the Jets have a lot of very good pieces up front.
Yes, they do. And to your point, I think Jermaine Johnson kind of laid the blueprint for someone like Will McDonald. That's been well talked about. You take a look at the game summary, the number that jumps out immediately is the passing net yards for the New England Patriots, minus 26. 89 yards rushing for the Patriots, only converting on 7.1% of that team's third downs. Obviously not the most offensive, heavy scoring game in that sense, but of course that leads us to Breece Hall, which leads us inside the film room. Quincy's Breakdown, powered by Microsoft Surface, and you know that we're going to have to start with Breece Hall considering he's the man of the hour. He's the MVP of this game for the Jets.
Absolutely, and again, football is a team sport, so I always say it, right? On long rushes, receivers
here we go.
are very much responsible
It all comes back
for
to
the
the
success,
receiver.
baby. So right here, we got our young guy, Irvin Charles, at the top. I've raved about him a little bit on special teams, and today he came up big for us in the run. But not only Irvin Charles, right? I also want to point out Bowden at the bottom. So these 2 guys really are key to the success on this play, right? We're going to have a kick out and a down block from the receiver. So right here, great job right here connecting, right? I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see. Right here, connecting on the safety, Peppers at the top, right? Then you're going to also see Bowden come in and a great kick out. And there you go, your workhorse, your feature back, taking it the rest of the way. These guys, I'm telling you, team football all the time.
And he doesn't need much space. He's such a long strider. He's got sub 4.4 speed. He takes it to the house. What I liked from the Jets offensively today was playing in those conditions. Nathaniel Hackett, 42 rushes, 20 pass attempts. You flip it to the Patriots. They had 30 pass attempts. They only attempted to run the ball 21 times.
Yeah. No, it's great, right? It's a great way to go into the game. It's a smart way to go into the game. We talk a lot about Hackett and the play calls that he makes, but I think today was a greatly called game.
Trevor Siemian finishes with 70 passing yards. 34 of them go to Garrett Wilson, who exited the game with a head injury. He was being evaluated for a concussion. And Garrett had like a big play early in the game when he sparked the Jets with a 30-yard reception.
Absolutely. So right here, you got your feature receiver at the bottom, right? And this guy, anytime he's one-on-one, you should always give him the ball. Just give him an opportunity. Give him as many opportunities as possible. So I'm going to show it from this side first. This is a great job. Great placement, too, by Siemian, man. A lot of these go balls are really reliant on the placement of the ball. So I want to break this down. So a lot of times, this is usually a loss right here, right? DB's up top. DB's at the top right here. And you got your receiver behind looking back. A lot of times you tell the DB, you got to squeeze the space, right? And so on this play, he doesn't choose to do that. And it's a great ball because he's expecting back shoulder. You see his eyes. He's looking back. I think his back shoulder there. And a great job by Siemian to throw it ahead. And again, ball placement is so key to these things. It's a team game. Guys have to be on the same page.
How about the way Garrett used his arms there?
Yes. legally.
Yes.
Legally, right?
Can you take us through
Of course, right? So it's a lot of hand fighting going on. Sometimes you'll see them calling plays, calling flags on things that are unnecessary. Right here, they're both making contact, right? And it's very slight contact just to kind of feel where you're at, especially the DB. He has to know. The DB is the one that initiated contact here, and this is the reason why. A lot of times when they have this type of situation, they want to know where he's at before I check for the ball. But again, like I said, Simeon put the ball in the perfect spot and then allowed Garrett Wilson to make that play.
That's a Buckeye on Buckeye right there. That's Sean Wade went to Ohio State. Garrett Wilson, of course, went to Ohio State. Wonder how many times they lined up against each other. But the man of the hour is Breece Hall, and Bob Wischusen caught up with Hall after the game.
Breece, there's only 3 times in franchise history that a back has carried the ball more often than you did today. Did you know the workload for this final game was going to be as heavy as it was?
Yeah. When I saw how cold it was, and I knew, like, as a quarterback, it's going to be hard for you to throw the ball. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to get the ball a lot today. And the O-line played very well. The coaches trusted me, and I got a lot of opportunities. So it was a blessing.
1,500-yard season. It's been a hard year, obviously, right? Losing Aaron Rodgers in the opening game and the ups and downs of this year. So to put this year kind of in perspective with this kind of a performance for you, what would you say?
It was frustrating. Still wish we were in the position to make the playoffs and everything. But for me personally, just to be coming off of ACL and be dealing with people halfway through the season saying, I took a step back and I don't look as good and everything like that. It's just to use it as internal motivation, and I just kept pushing every week. So I'm just happy to say I played a 17-game season finally, and just being able to finish it out with a win was great.
You proved a lot of those doubters wrong. And one final question as well, because I'm sure you'd love to give some credit to your offensive line. Patriots, talked about this earlier with Trevor. The Patriots coming into today, the #1 rushing defense in the NFL. And you knew in these conditions it was going to be a running game, and all of the different changes you guys have had to make on the offensive line, the group the job that group did in front of you today.
Yeah, they did great. I always just tell them to, just get me past the D-line and I'll handle it from there. But, those guys did a great job of getting me to the second level and just staying consistent, and they just kept pushing the whole game. So I appreciate them for sure.
Congratulations on a terrific season.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. That's Breece Hall, guys. Back to you.
What Breece Hall has done in his first season coming back from an ACL injury, I remember a lot of people were saying it'll take him a year to get back. Clearly that is not the case, and they said he would need to be Adrian Peterson freaky-like. Clearly Adrian Peterson, who tore his ACL and then led the league with over 200 or over 2,000 rushing yards the following season. Different game at the time in 2012 than 2024, but both of those guys extremely talented running backs. Everyone, if you're a Jets fan, should be very excited about the future of the Jets and Breece Hall. Let's hear from Coach Salah addressing the team after this victory, snapping the 15-game losing streak and starting the 2024 season on a high note.
Despite all, there was a lot of adversity over the course of this entire season, but not one person in here flinched all year. I love the way we finished this season, all right? I love the way y'all fought every single week, no matter how bad it got, no matter how hard it got. Everybody kept freaking fighting. Enjoy this one. Enjoy this one all off season. We said we're going to start 2024 is going to be special. 2024 is going to be special. We said 1-0. We're 1-0. We're going to get a lot of wins this year. A lot of wins this year. This is the first one. Break it down, man.
Great job. Family on me. Family on 3. 1, 2, 3. Family.
All right, that was a little bit of a look ahead into the 2024 season. But here on Jets Overtime, let's take a look back on the 2023 season. Let's start with our report cards. Anthony Beck, let's start for the season grade. Your offense teacher grade goes to what? Or what is the grade?
Yeah, offense is a D. I mean, listen, even with the little success they had at the end of the year, to me, the plan to get back on track and the amount of time that the defense held the fort down to try to get something going just wasn't good enough. Clearly this team was built around Aaron Rodgers, the offense and all that stuff. And, you knew that, at that point you were starting at a C at that point because you just didn't have your dog there at the quarterback position. But, I think there's a lot to look back on, a lot to self-critique. There's a lot of lack of execution across the board when it was good and the plays were good. But I think overall, there was nothing really built. There was no consistency. You didn't hang your hat on anything. Week to week, there was a lot of guessing, in my opinion, on what this team would look like offensively. And again, they finished on a high note. I think that's one thing to look at. That's great. But, again, it's an underachieving side of the ball. Wasn't complimentary at all this season. And, a D, I think, is a worthy grade for an offense, quite frankly, that, we thought would be at least more manageable and suitable throughout the season, even without A-Rod.
Yeah, I respect that decision. I think I agree with a lot of sentiments of AB. I think the biggest thing for me is when I look back at the season, I really look at when Zach Wilson was playing. There were a lot of good moments, but overall, when you really rewatch the film, there was a lot of plays left out on the field, and so I think that's really what kind of drops your grade the most. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of success combined with a lot of injuries on this offense. But there's a lot of bright spots, and I think that there was a lot of things that they need to kind of have a conversation with in the offseason in terms of the backup quarterback. Well, whoever goes in next year, if something were to happen, right, there needs to be this mentality of win, right, regardless of what's going on. And it felt a lot of times throughout this year that whoever was in was not taking the chances that need to be taken. And so you didn't get a lot of success on the offensive side.
I agree with you both. Injuries are no excuses, but the Jets, their line combinations, it was a different offensive line combination every week, and they played with 4 different quarterbacks here this season. I'm going to go back to individual efforts and progress from guys like Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Tyler Conklin quietly had a very good year. I like what I saw from Jeremy Ruckert down the stretch. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to line up in this game. And then also Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee, they might be depth pieces for you down the line, and that's very important. The bottom line was this was going to be Aaron Rodgers matched up with Nathaniel Hackett. It never happened. It took place for 3 offensive plays against Buffalo in Week 1.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the grades are what they are, but it's really incomplete because you didn't see what this Jets offense looks like the way it was designed to be with Aaron Rodgers. Let's go back around the horn for defense. We'll start with EA. We'll see if you and Quincy are sharing a brain on this one, even though I wish that we saw the missed fist bump because you guys are sharing a brain.
Can we do it now? We're live here.
Okay, all right, great. I'm glad you guys made up. But actually, it's now EA and AB sharing a brain on defense.
Yeah, B+. I thought, again, they came at you in waves, and Robert Salah pointed this out after the game today. They raised their level when they played the best of the best, whether it be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. Remember that game, that win over the Philadelphia Eagles. I think you have stars at each level when you're talking about Quinnen Williams and Jermaine Johnson, and we saw Bryce Huff break out this year. In the linebacker position, how about that pair of Quincy Williams, the team MVP, and C.J. Mosley? And then you go back to the secondary. Again, I've said this before, but the Jets' top 3 are as good as anybody in the National Football League with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II. Takeaways went way up, but there were a couple of performances there throughout the year that weren't up to their standards. So I'm going to be tough here. B+.
Quincy?
EA says tough, B+. Now listen, I think I gave an A- because there was a lot of great plays by this defense, and I think the biggest thing for me was you talk about a guy, DJ Reed, who lines up across the field from Sauce Gardner. That's not easy to do because you know you're going to get a lot of targets, right? And so there were some games where he gave up some yardage, right? And I think that's going to happen. Guys, they're playing a lot of talented receivers, and so those guys are going to get theirs. You can't stop everybody, but overall, the secondary played really well. And then the D-line, I mean, to be shuffling all those different guys and every single one of them is productive, right? We talked about it earlier, how we're going to be missing some of that production or it's going to be switched around. Somebody might take all of it or you might be able to spread it around. Ultimately, these guys are going to continue to be productive because they are talented guys. And then the guys in the middle, right? C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams. I mean, those two guys are amazing tandem.
Anthony, you also gave the Jets defense a B+.
Yeah, I think we had an opportunity this year with if it were all good standing offensively to see a very special unit historically, in my opinion. Things got overshadowed this year because they were asked to do almost the impossible, and nothing could cover up maybe some of the glaring things that happened every so often throughout the games during the season. Imagine if you have a 7, 10, 14-point lead in half or a third of the games this year, how different and the pressure it puts on offenses to let alone, have a lead or try to, keep the close games where they could have been lights out with that complementary piece. So they were well above and beyond. I could have probably given them more, but you got to look at how they played in those circumstances, in the moments for this season. B plus I think fits it. But man, I know DJ Reed talked about, how this team could have been like historically good, and I think if we got to see that last year or this year with all the pieces in front of him on offense, I think we may be talking about something right now. But I just felt like it was a hell of an effort across the board from top to bottom for what was given to them on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I also think it goes back to what you said, EA. Playing with the lead, we only saw it a couple times throughout the season. The first time we really saw it was in Denver, and that game got close at the end, but the Jets defense pinned its ears back, and they got after Russell Wilson and company. And you take a look at who's set to be a free agent into the 2024 season. On defense, Carl Lawson didn't have a huge role on this team. Obviously, Jordan Whitehead, Chuck Clark, Bryce Huff, Quentin Jefferson, Solomon Thomas, Al Woods, those are really the main guys, as well as Ashton Davis, who had another interception today. And that brings us to special teams, because Thomas Morstead and Greg Zuerlein, both with expiring contracts right now, and everyone gave a little bit of the different flavor here. Let's start with you, AB. You gave the most difficult or harsh grade to special teams with a B.
Yeah, B's really good. I mean, if I went to school and got a B in every class, that would have been special, right? So I think they did a heck of a job. I thought Morstead was the offensive player of the year almost when you talk about just trying to salvage a lot of the bad drives that were there. I mean, quite honestly, he saved. The field position was crucial. Think about every game. You can think about at least one punt that he flipped the field for this team. That's huge. So, he did a great job. And, of course, Greg the Leg was phenomenal this year. I mean, he got to kick more field goal. I don't know how many he kicked for the season, but, I felt like he made most of them. He definitely warrants coming back. You don't touch that room right now and try to bring them back. I think those guys would love to come back. So it's nice to have those pieces. And I felt like some of those other sprinkled guys, talk about Charles and Gibson did some good things. I think sky's the limit for him in the return game. I think he's only going to get more confident and better. And we saw some flashes of really cool stuff from him. So again, I think sky's the limit for the special teams. And Coach Boyer, he's the key, and he's made it through multiple coaching staffs here with the Jets because he does a great job, and it showed this year.
I think we should go to EA because he gave a B+, and then we'll wrap up with Quincy giving the A.
I echo what AB just said about Brant Boyer. He's one of the finest assistant coaches in the National Football League. This was the best kicking year overall when you're combining a place kicker and punter with Greg Zuerlein and Thomas Morstead in the history of this franchise. Quincy talks about him every week. I think the Jets have really found something on the outside with Irv Charles, and you're combining that with one of the league's better coverage guys in Justin Hardy. With all that being said, the Jets did relinquish a punt return for a touchdown this season. And while they did have some success on fourth down, they were stopped on one occasion, I believe, as well. Yeah. So I'm going to be like Boyer and put my coaching hat on and say, yeah, we were very good, but there's a couple things we can clean up.
And a couple trickeration plays as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Brant Boyer, he's been coaching since I was here. So the guy's been here for a little bit. He's a hell of a coach, hell of a human. And I think that what he's doing with his special teams unit consistently, year in and year out, they lost Barrios and came back this year and found a needle in the haystack, a guy that nobody would have ever thought could be a returner. And his first return, or at least his first game, he got a touchdown, right? Yeah. You put Greg Zuerlein out there, I don't know if anybody thought that he would continue to be doing what he's doing, and he's balling for these guys. I mean, it's just Morstead, another guy, right? So just guys continue to show up. We talked about Irv Charles, and so basically what I have to say is that, these guys are ballers.
And both those guys are Pro Bowl alternates, and Morstead and Zuerlein, they're the first ones. They're in the batters or in the on-deck circle. They're not.
Yeah, and hopefully they're going to get an at-bat there in the Pro Bowl. And I just want to mention about Gibson. I agree with all you guys. I really like the flashes he showed as a rookie, including that punt return against the Bills in Week 1. What a dramatic victory. but you want to see him work on his ball security all season.
Definitely. I also think you started to see Gibson with the ball in his hands a little more in the back half of the season start to have a little more confidence on offense.
Yes.
Put special teams aside. And to your point, Quincy, to go from somebody that was a Pro Bowler at returner in Braxton Berrios to then sign an undrafted free agent and have the confidence to toss him out there as your starting punt returner. He obviously won the game in week 1. And then, to Anthony's point, has a lot of potential. We'll see what happens over the course of the offseason. He could play at least a substantial role for the Jets in the future as early as 2024. This is Jets Overtime, presented by SiriusXM. Jets finish and end the year on a high note, beating the Patriots, snapping the streak of 15 straight losses to New England. But looking ahead, Anthony, as we kind of wrap up here from the studio for the final time of the regular season, which is crazy to say, what do you think about where the Jets stand just overall? You factor in maybe their opponents not set in stone yet of 2024, the pieces on this team, where they stand in the draft is still, I believe, up in the air, but likely a back half of the top 10 selection, probably 10 to 12 area. When you factor all that in, where do you stand on the outlook of the 2024 New York Jets?
Yeah, well, I think what leads the charge is you got to fix your offensive line. You got to assume that guys will get healthy and you fill those spots, and then you get better at the other ones. You do have to make some critical decisions there. And, I think Joe Douglas has always been lauded as a guy that, takes care of the trenches. Well, this will be his biggest challenge because coming off a season, it didn't pan out the way everybody wanted to. So that'll be number one. Number two, you got to find a 1A, B receiver to complement Garrett Wilson. Lazard, like Coach was saying, proclaims that he's going to be a much better receiver next year. And I think that's the case because, his best years are with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to lean my hat on that. And you got to find another piece out there to get that. Could be a draft, could be a free agency. I don't care. If you have the opportunity to get a game changer, like a Garrett Wilson kind of guy, I think they'll be able to find at least one of those guys and maybe a middle tier guy to sprinkle in just so you have a little depth. But you like your young players like you talked about. And last but not least, again, you may have to fill some voids on defense. Overall, I think they have enough to be just as good as they were this year and better. Have a plan if Aaron Rodgers wasn't there. And I think that'll be a crucial deal as well. The backup has to be productive enough to at least hold the fort down. You don't think about it. You don't think that, your quarterback can't play the season, but you get a taste of it this year. And it changes now your thought process, which I truly believe it will. And I think they'll address that as well. So that's all you really need. Now, that's it. It's not easy. But it's not easy because offensive line is tricky. It really is, and it was tricky. It's always been tricky. But teams have done far more with a little bit in between, not as bad as we were, but with injury. So you just got to be able to face the adversities. A whole depleted offensive line obviously kills anybody, but you got to be able to bounce through certain guys getting banged up throughout the season and still win football games, and that's the key in the offseason.
One of the guys, a promising piece that we haven't really spoken about, Joe Tittman, walks off the field, gets carted to the locker room, did not return with an ankle injury. That's another piece, EA, of this offensive line that you would imagine has a promising future. And another guy, Elijah Vera Tucker, he's had back-to-back season-ending injuries. What does the future have in store for him? But when fully healthy, you add in Tittman in his second year, you add AVT healthy, the Jets might not need as many pieces as you would have imagined a couple weeks ago.
Well, I think AB hit the nail on the head. It starts up front, and Tittman showed a lot of promise his rookie season. Hopefully he is okay, that ankle checks out, and he'll have a normal offseason. Elijah Vera Tucker, this team plays different when he's in the lineup. His versatility is such a huge asset, but with that being said, hopefully you can find a permanent home for him along the offensive line. Who is going to line up for this team at both tackle spots next year is one of the key questions heading into this offseason. AB mentioned it. This team's going to be better with Aaron Rodgers playing. But what is the quarterback room looking like after Rodgers? And also, who is that second option at receiver? But defensively, you're going to tinker a little bit. that will continue to be one of the top units in the National Football League. Special teams, after watching them this year, you know Boyer's going to get it right as well. So if this offense takes a step, takes a jump, the Jets should be where they want to be next year. That's playing meaningful football in mid-January. That has to be the goal. We talked about it was the goal this year. They got to get it done next year.
Yeah.
Quincy, where do you stand on the outlook for the 2024 Jets?
Yeah, I mean, everybody hit it on the head so far, right? Offensive line is really important, right? You think about last year, there was a lot of promising pieces that ended up not really coming to fruition this year. Max Mitchell was a guy that we were really, high on, and unfortunately injuries as well as some other things that happened with the O-line just didn't allow him to be the guy that we thought he was going to be. So, it's going to be really tricky to figure out, but O-line is really important. They got to find some guys, whether it be in the draft or in free agency. As far as receiver, right, I think if you can get Garrett Wilson to be a guy that's getting you 1,200, 1,300 yards, then you really only need a 1B, 2A guy, right? Because you have a guy in Conklin who had multiple quarterbacks and he got 600 yards. That's really good for a guy that is not getting consistent targets, right? So if you can get him up to 800 yards, maybe even I mean, this is wishful thinking, but if you can get that guy to 1,000, then you need another guy just to kind of make it a little scary, right? Because we talked earlier in the pregame Central show that the Patriots like to take away your top 2 targets. So your third guy has to be a guy that can make plays. You get those two things handled. Obviously, backup quarterback. You're moving in the right direction.
You have stars at running back and receiver.
Yeah.
And now, hopefully, you have a star coming back at quarterback. We'll have to see what he is after coming back from the Achilles and Aaron Rodgers. But I think it's a great way the Jets ended this season because they don't got to hear about this nonsense about the streak the next time they play against the Patriots. That's over. It's over.
Yeah, it's a part of history. That's what Sauce Gardner said. It is, in fact, over. Anthony, just want to, before we let you go for the final time in 2023, 2024, we want to thank you every week, like we always do, for joining us, whether that's at MetLife Stadium, whether that's here in Florham Park, or whether that's either in Iowa, Memphis, Florida, wherever you are. We appreciate it. I'll leave you on this. You're a big draft guy. You pay attention to college football, of course, because your son plays for Iowa State. If you were the Jets, maybe, I know the National Championship is tomorrow. Are there any players that you have your eye on that could be a potential Jet early in the draft or throughout the entire 7 rounds?
Yeah, listen, I think you're going to take the best lineman on the board where you're at. I mean, that's clear, concise. I got to think there's going to be a piece there. There's going to be quarterbacks that are going to get overplayed in this draft. There's going to be some serious talent that slide down. I mean, hell, we might have 5 quarterbacks in the first 15. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where it's headed, and it usually does. And you got some receivers that are coming out that are really talented as well. Washington, you got one at Ohio State. There's a lot of pieces there. So, I think when you're talking about linemen, sometimes people get enamored with skill. You're going to find yourself with somebody in front of you that you can fill a hole very quickly. And that's what I think the Jets need to be very wishful and hopeful for moving forward. I do appreciate this show. I appreciate being with you guys. That's what I would do. And I think obviously that's going to be looked hard on. I didn't miss a game this year, regardless of where I was. I take pride in that, number one. But you guys have been awesome. And listen, I got to self-reflect. I got to self-critique and be better in all in or not, because, again, as strong as I finished the season, I've always been a strong finisher with those kind of things. Throughout the year, I got to be better within the 20s. I was always a red zone guy that cleaned things up and scored. I got to find a way to make it through the thick of the season between the 20s, and I'll be better next year, I promise.
Much like the New York Jets, you ended the 2023 season well, and you started the 2024 calendar year and 2024 season
Undefeated.
Well. With all in or not today. Undefeated in 2024, just like the New York Jets. Really quick, one-word answer, Michigan or Washington tomorrow night?
Washington. Tampa, baby. My Tampa guy, Michael Penix. He's going to take care of business. I'm claiming him. I don't care what you say. I live here. He's my guy. I'm going with him.
Love it. AB, appreciate it. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you at some point in the offseason, as always. And I guess I just want to end on this. Your guys' college football playoff prediction. Rome Odunze is who he was mentioning on Washington. He's a baller.
Yeah.
Caroline Hendershot? who is part of this program as well as Pregame Central and on Jets platforms throughout the year. She will be at that game in Houston, Texas. I am going to take Washington as well. I think Michigan beat up Alabama at the line of scrimmage, and Washington's offensive line is very good. If you give Penix any time, those receivers are going to get open against anybody, and they always find a way to win. I got the Huskies.
Yeah, you also love the Huskies, too. Their uniforms are top 5 easily.
Yeah, like a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
I like them. Real quick, as we close off this year, it's year 2 down. I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate everybody in the back. Appreciate Jets Nation for watching. As a Nebraska guy, as a Big Ten guy, I can't go for Michigan. So.
Oh, you cannot?
Cannot. So
okay.
I'm going to watch
well, I'll be the only one to stand with Caroline because I hope she has a great time in Houston. It would be a lifetime memory. It'd be a core memory if Michigan wins. It'd be a core memory regardless. But if they win, that'll be awesome. So I'm going to say go blue. I have a lot of friends who went to Michigan, and so I'd like to see them have a little bit of success here to start the 2024 year. Just like you said, Quincy, we appreciate everyone not only tuning in, but making this program possible from the back room with guys like Tim Morgan, Matt Sitkoff, Katie Weirdo, Jordan McGrigg. I'm just going to call you Audio Dave because I don't know your last name, but you do a great job on the boards. Quincy Anunwa, Eric Allen, Ethan Greenberg. We appreciate each and every one of you watching the show, and stay tuned for the rest of the offseason because Jets content does not stop, even though the Jets won't line up until September of 2024.